Hi there, my name is Jonathan Latta, and I teach percussion at University of the Pacific. It's my pleasure to share with you this video today that will focus on tips and tricks for the 2026 California All-State Percussion Audition. Throughout this video, I'm going to go through the different excerpts to share with you different ideas on how to make good musical choices and prepare your tape at the highest level. There are three things I'd like to start with, which will be themes we'll use throughout all the different excerpts to come back repeatedly and discuss. The first might be the one that's the most common sense, but it's good to be reminded. It's accuracy. Many recordings I've listened to over the years, beautiful playing is done, but then attention to key signature, accidentals, rhythms, and other things within the music that require accuracy are not quite paid attention to at the level that we hope. So always consider marking your part, making sure you've listened to recordings that give you good information about the piece, and being clear on communicating all the accurate information in the music. Next up, as percussionists, we know one of our primary jobs is tempo. Any listener, percussionist or not, can hear when tempo fluctuates. So you want to spend ample time preparing this music with the metronome, being very clear about the tempos that are being asked, and even inside of a piece, some of the tempos change, and you want to be clear about those tempi. So make sure that you've worked with a metronome, being consistent with your choices in regards to subdivision, and making sure tempo is a top priority. And then last but not least, make artful and musical choices. Make good sounds on your instrument. That might mean making choices between different instruments, one snare drum or another, and it's definitely going to come into the conversation we'll have about mallet choices and stick choices. So I've listened to a lot of recordings again over the years that have had great attention to tempo, are extremely accurate, but don't stand out because the colors aren't very thoughtful, or maybe the recording device is too close, and so everything's punchy and brittle sounding. Seek good colors, make good choices, record yourself with multiple choices so you can compare, and work with your coaches and teachers to make sure that you can get good sounds on the instruments that are recorded well and present you in an artful and musical way. Let's go ahead and get started now. So our first excerpt is the Two-Mallet Marimba excerpt, the Allegro movement from the A minor violin sonata by Bach. So the first thing you want to do is listen to recordings. There are many beautiful recordings of professional violinists performing this work. And in listening to those recordings, you'll get great musical insights that you can apply to your own recording. Next up is your mallet choice. Know if you're on a wooden instrument or a synthetic instrument, and some of the mallets that can sound really good on that particular instrument. I'm choosing a yarn mallet. I'm on a rosewood marimba. I'm looking for a sound that creates warmth and clarity. Those two things together are what we're trying to do. We also notice that this piece has large shifts in dynamics. Even in the first measure, we see a full open sound at the beginning, and in beat 3 we shift to piano. So I'm listening to my mallet to make sure I can create that range of dynamics while still being clear and making a warm sound. Next, and most important with this piece, is to consider sticking. I think sticking will be the biggest thing you'll want to pay attention to as you're working through this piece. So as we get to the second measure, we already see where choices need to be made. So a couple of rules I like to follow. When I have large leaps, I prepare for those large beats and make sure that there's no awkward stick crossing or awkward movement done there. Also, I try to only create double stickings that occur one after the other, so not 3 doubles in a row. So I'm trying to make thoughtful choices in that way. So right off the bat, if we start with the left hand in the second measure, it starts again with the left hand, and we'll notice that the octave leap in the first beat works well. So that works well, we've stayed open. Beat 2, we continue the sticking as it comes, but then in beat 3, we need to start to make a choice. Where this 32nd note enters, that's where we may want to choose something different. I particularly recommend in this place a double right. So on beat 3, I'd start with right, and then where the 32nd notes come in, I'd repeat the right. Right, right, left, left. Then my octave is kept open again. So that would sound like this. You saw that my octave stayed open, and I made a sticking choice that was helpful to keeping those leaps very comfortable in my playing. So, making thoughtful choices about your mallet, creating good texture throughout, being thoughtful related to the dynamics, and then as you've listened to those choices from those representative recordings, you can be aware of the color, sound, and phrasing that you want to make to be successful in your performance of this piece. The second excerpt is the Four-Mallet Marimba excerpt, a chorale titled A Little Prayer. I'm now using a very soft mallet. So this mallet creates a warm sound that connects the notes, and when played hand-to-hand in a chorale style, is very full and rich in the sound. You'll want to experiment with different mallets, play them, and then record them so you can pick the mallet that gives you the sound that you hope to create when playing a chorale. Now, in playing chorales, there's two things that I find that can often crop up. The first is that it might be difficult to play in time. Tempo can be challenging when moving from chord to chord. Second then is what I call smearing, where we bump the wrong notes along the way. So here's an exercise I do when preparing a chorale to help me work on both those issues. The first thing I'll do is to play the chords in unison. I'll use the first measure and a half as I show you through this exercise. So here's the chords, just struck in unison, no rolling. I would practice this multiple times just to get a sense of what the motion is and to really get in my ears that harmony. Next up, I'll still play in unison, but I'll use an eighth note pulse. Then, to get more to the motion and tempo of the piece, still in unison, I'm going to do 16th notes. So I've done those exercises multiple times to get a sense of the pulse, the motion, and what I do to move from interval to interval. Now I'm going to break them and use alternating hands in 30-second notes. And that now gives me a sense of what it will be to move from chord to chord in time. So I use this exercise throughout the whole piece to make sure I can do the motion, hear the harmony, and to create a nice chorale sound. Then I vary the roll speed, but I have a good sense after doing this exercise of how I'll create pulse through this movement, as well as also the different intervals and be successful without any smearing. This is always helpful for me when I play chorales. The next excerpt is for xylophone. This is the Overture to Colosprio by Kavalevsky. So when we have an orchestral audition, the first recommendation is similar to the Bach. Go out and listen to recordings. Multiple orchestral recordings exist and give you a chance to hear how this music sounds in context with the rest of the orchestra. When we perform excerpts, we want to be hearing the orchestra in our mind, and if done well, then the listener will also hear the orchestra being played through your performance of the excerpt. I've chosen a mallet that's not too brittle. It's very easy, especially in the higher range of the xylophone, as this excerpt resides, to do something that's too brittle. Listen to your mallet, get a sound that's clear and round in your xylophone sound. This excerpt is very susceptible to tempo fluctuations, so you'll want to spend a lot of time with the metronome. Go back and listen to your orchestral recordings, set your metronome accordingly, and that will help you be steady while playing this excerpt. This excerpt moves around the instrument a bit. Large leaps at time that need to be worked out with the sticking and to make sure that you can stay in tempo. Now this excerpt can benefit from some interesting dynamic choices to add more life to the music. At the beginning of the excerpt, we see forte with a crescendo. Well, what's nice, at the second line or fifth measure of this excerpt, to do a diminuendo on the way back down the scale. So that would sound like this. So that shape in the line gives a really nice sense. So I would experiment with that. Where crescendo you go up, then you might do diminuendi to help you bring the texture back down to something more soft and give shape to the line. Now the other place you can make exciting choice of the dynamic is in the last 6 measures. These measures have repeated notes, and it's nice to give some direction to that. So again, at a slower tempo, I'll help you explore what you can do there. When I play the D flat, the repeated note, I'm going to do a crescendo through it. And then in the last 2 measures that have that repeated alternating passage, I'm going to do a crescendo through that all the way to the end. It would sound like this. So I do some drop in the dynamics to give myself a sense of direction and line to give it some excitement. It's finding these nuances in these orchestral excerpts, things that you hear in the orchestral recording, and ways to shape the line that help you stand out when you play an excerpt such as this one. The next excerpt is the Tambourine Excerpt. This is from Stravinsky's Petrushka. This is a very common excerpt for orchestral tambourine playing. You'll notice I'm using a tambourine that has a head. In this case, it's a black swamp instrument. Black swamp or a Grover instrument are two very good choices. And then I've treated this tambourine with beeswax. There's a layer of beeswax I've put over coated the upper part of the head to help me prepare for the friction roll we're about to do in a moment. So right off the bat, we see these rolls indicated with the thumb, trills, and then they also have a marcato accent. So in doing this gesture, I'm going to use my middle finger, but you can use your thumb. And the thing I'll do is execute the friction, but then to create the accent, I'm going to pop my wrist forward, and that's going to have the bottom of my palm slap against the tambourine. It would sound like this. And so that quick motion creates that marcato, bright accent sound. The other roll we have right after 205 is the shake roll. I like to start my shake roll with an attack, and then we see that marcato accent again. We'll strike it at the end of the roll, so it would sound like this. And we've created the start and clear ending to the roll. Now, the biggest challenge in this after you've mastered the techniques is this transition into 205. We have the half note at 69, and then we're going to go into the same pulse, but now a dotted quarter note at 69 in our new 6/8 meter. So we want to make the change in that tempo nice and steady and have an awareness of what it is. So step one that I do is I'm creating the big pulse with my foot. I'm just going to sing through it. So 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1 and 2 and 1 and 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now that I've got that pulse and the transition of the pulse in mind, I'm going to sing with the pickup to 2 measures before 205. And this will give me a sense of what the music should do. So I'll start my pulse again, and I'll give you a singing rendition of those measures of the excerpt. Z-da, 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 z-da. So now I've created the pulse and transition. Then we want to put it into action by playing it. So I'll start with tapping my foot again to give me the big pulse, and then I'll play through a pickup to 2 measures before 205 to the end of the excerpt so you can hear the transition from the 2/4 to the 6/8. Gives you a sense of how to move from the 2/4 pulse by using the big beat and then turning that into the dotted quarter note in the 6/8. So preparing your tambourine, working on your friction rolls, and then studying that transition from the half note to the dotted quarter note, both at the 69 beat pulse, will help you be successful on this excerpt. Our next excerpt is an exciting one. This is our crash cymbal excerpt, a portion of Tchaikovsky's Romeo and Juliet. This is the part in the music where the Montagues and Capulets are in a sword fight, and your cymbals are the sounds of the swords. In choosing your cymbals, you'll probably want to err to the smaller side, something that you can be quick with your motion and to create consistent, bright sounds. So I'm going to use an 18-inch pair of cymbals, but maybe even a 16-inch pair of cymbals might be the right choice for you. So the excerpt opens up with quarter notes. So these are going to be longer sounds. So we want to make big, full sounds, but then at letter O is when the fun starts. The key to letter O is to making sure you have a strong, consistent 8th note subdivision. That's going to help you keep pulse and play these cymbal crashes at the right time in the music. The other thing about this section is that all those cymbal crashes, the goal is to sound as consistent as possible. So you're going to work on your sounds that are short and bright, but also consistent in your playing. Let's just talk through the first part here. So I'll start us going and I'll clap on the cymbal crashes and show you what I mean by the subdivision. So at the very beginning of the excerpt, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3. So we want to have that much consistency. So let's listen to it with the cymbals now. I was striving for very consistent cymbal crashes, very much in time, and all the while I have a strong eighth note pulse in my mind. Then we travel to the double bar, 4 bars before the end of the excerpt, and we have long tones again. These are half notes on beat 3, but the final note, the quarter note, is short. So let me play these last 4 bars for you. A nice, short, impactful crash at the very end. So now let's take a listen to the whole excerpt together now. Next up is the first of our 2 etudes. This is a snare drum etude, number 3 from Portraits in Rhythm by Anthony Cerrone. Step 1 is to take care of your drum. Make sure it's tuned the way you like. Consider any treatment you like, any muting. I have a small cloth I use to help remove extra ringing. And then play on a range of dynamics and make sure your snares are at the level that you would like, meaning that when you play soft, if their tightness is there, you can still hear a nice snare drum sound at a soft volume as well as a loud volume. After your drum is all set, you're ready to dive into the excerpt. The first thing for this excerpt I like to consider is a strong eighth note subdivision. This theme's been consistent, but at this pulse, an eighth note subdivision can help you be very steady as you play through the entire piece. That's at this slower quarter note equals 69 pulse. After you've done that, you're going to start to work through some of the different challenges in the piece. I have 2 spots I'd like to highlight for you in this short video. But first, we'll start at the 6th line. This is the line that has the forte piano rolls and the 8th notes that have the 4-stroke grace note roughs to them. So let's break that down to a couple things to work on. First, let's talk about the grace notes. It's not common we see 4-stroke roughs where you have 4 small grace notes and then a primary note. So you'll want to work on those. I advocate spending time in front of the mirror. Grace notes are a differentiation in height, meaning the primary notes are a high stick height and the grace notes are played at a low stick height. You want to create 4 clean bounces every time you execute these grace notes. It's not a buzz, it's 4 distinct bounces. So work on that, again, in front of a mirror and recording yourself to make sure you get the clarity of sounds you want. And then I would practice this portion without the grace notes, to listen for the pulse that you get, and then add the grace notes back in, making sure that you keep pulse the same while executing these lovely grace notes. Now, you want to think about this tempo. What's your roll base? We have these forte piano rolls, and at quarter note equals 69, I would start with considering a 30-second note roll base. So a way that you can exercise yourself in the 6th line is to do this portion while not doing a buzz roll, but just experimenting with that 30-second note base, not buzzing, and then doing the forte pianos. So an exercise that could sound like this. I will also remove the grace notes for more clarity. First 2 measures of the 6th line. Now let's do it with the buzz. That gives you a chance to just work on pulse, clarity of roll, and also a sense of how that 30-second note base might benefit you in playing those rolls. Now let's put it together. So we have the 8th notes with those 4-stroke rough grace notes, and then those forte piano rolls. And I would continue on through the rest of those measures, taking the grace notes out, working on pulse, elevating the sticks for the accent, and then using a good clean 30-second note roll base to bring it consistent in time and create the quality of roll that you might like. The other spot I'd like to look at are the last 2 lines. So this has many challenges just in this short little passage. We have a 3-stroke rough to start. My choice in this would be to consider right, left, left, right. That's how I execute a 3-stroke rough for me that makes a nice sound with crisp grace notes at a slight volume and then a high volume for the primary note. So I practiced that in front of the mirror. Going on, we have our 4-stroke rough in the middle of beat 3, so we'll want to work that out. we're going to create a crisp, bright sound right in the middle of beat 3, but I practiced it first without the grace notes, then I add the grace notes in. That gives me a chance to hear how that will fit there in time. Then, in the next measure, second measure of the second to last line, in the middle of it, pianissimo. We're going to make a quick change to a dynamic that's pianissimo, and then we have these dotted 8 notes with 32nd notes. So I'm going to count now in a 16th note subdivision. So let me start there. Pianissimo, beat 3, second measure, second to last line, demonstrating my 16th note subdivision. E and, E and, E and, E and a, or E and a 1. That gives me a good sense of how I can keep pulse there. The last thing I'd like to mention is, yes, we have double forte for the last line, the last 2 measures, but I would start a little bit softer than double forte and give yourself a sense of direction. So let's listen to these last 2 lines all put together. And now our final etude, the Timpani Etude. This is number 48 from Mitchell Peters' Fundamental Methods for Timpani. Before you even start playing, you want to take some care with your drums. So you want to make sure that each drum is in tune with itself. We also call this clearing the head. That's where each lug is tightened the same amount. If one lug is tightened differently, then when you strike a sustained tone, that lug will pull the pitch in one direction or the other. So you want to make sure the drum is in tune with itself. Next up, we tune the drum to the pitches for the piece. We have a low E, an A, and a high E. Take some time with those pitches. Also make sure you like the perfect fourth, the perfect fifth, and the octave. A lot of time spent on tuning the drums to themselves and to the pitches will pay off in your recording. Now, next up, we want to consider our mallets. So I'm using a mallet that's relatively hard. It's not an ultra staccato, but it's definitely not a fluffy cartwheel. We want to get something that's articulate, but also still has a warm sound. So this is a medium hard mallet. We want to be consistent in our playing. So I'm sitting on a throne. This allows me to have beating spot every time be consistent because I'm stationary on a throne. Last up, consider the drums I'm using. So I'm using a 32-inch timpano for the low E. The A is on a 29-inch timpano, but I've chosen a 23-inch timpano for the upper E. We might default to using our 26, but the E is in the upper part of the range, and that tight drum might sound punchy and not have as much tone as the other ones. This E sounds very nice on my 23-inch timpano. Now let's dive into the music. First up, I noticed this piece has some rolls, specifically rolls on the lower drums. So I like to remember this rhyming phrase, lower equals slower. So the lower the drum, the slower the roll. So when we have these rolls on the low E, for example, we want to be nice and open and slow. If we get excited and we roll too fast, we're hearing a very percussive sound and not the tone of the drum. So let me provide an example of rolling on the low E. A very slow roll speed to keep a nice open tone. Next up, sticking. Like our marimba excerpt, we want to consider our sticking over large leaps. So I'm looking now in the third line, second measure, where we have 4 16th notes on B2 on the high E, and then immediately followed by 4 16th notes on the low E. I would start this with the left hand. To finish the phrase in the next beat, when I go to the A, I would just do a cross sticking. So it would look like this. Mapping out those stickings carefully will be very helpful as you prepare this piece. Another place that is similar, second to last line, third measure. Beat 3 has 16th notes on a high E, and then the next measure starts with a roll on the low E. The left hand lead is very helpful at that time. Lastly, I want to talk about the metric modulations. So we see in the fourth line, we move from 3/4 to 9/8, with the composer asking for the dotted quarter note to remain the same. That means the 8th note pulse will be consistent. So I'll tap on my leg to demonstrate this example. I'll start in that fourth line 2 measures before the 9/8 when I do my counting exercise. 1 and 2 and 3 and 2 and 2 and 3 and 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2. So my pulse on my leg stayed very consistent and I just changed my counting. Let's go ahead and take a listen while I play that now. So the pulse remained very consistent. Then on the way back, at the end of the piece, we go from 6/8 back to a 3/4. That's where our eighth note pulse remains the same. Eighth note equals eighth note. So through that 6/8 to the 3/4, you would count like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. So practicing the counting, using the metronome to keep those steady pulse while you work on what numbering system you use to change from 6/8 to 3/4 or 3/4 to 9/8 will help you be consistent making those transitions. Well, I hope these videos have been helpful. I do wish you the best of luck as you prepare your all-state auditions for 2026. Take care.